You've been gaslit all your life. You've been told that your body does not matter, that it's what's inside that counts, that the real you is an invisible essence called personality, character, or soul. You've been told that concern for your appearance is shallow and vain, that your true worth lies entirely within. Nietzsche claims that we've all been hoodwinked into believing that we are immaterial souls imprisoned in flesh. But the truth is that you are a body through and through. The health, strength, power and beauty of the body are not trivialities. They are fundamental to your identity, to your destiny. The mind itself, that chattering thing you call I, is not some sovereign ruler over the body. It is a function of the body, an expression of it. Your mind is not the body's master. It's your body's slave. What follows is an exhortation to return to yourself, to the recognition that to love, strengthen, revere and transform your body is not superficial. It's the crucial first step in becoming who you truly are.
What does not kill me makes me stronger.
You have discovered the Becoming Übermensch podcast. Becoming Übermensch is a resource for personal growth and transcendence based on the radical teachings of Friedrich Nietzsche.
Quote, I shall not go your way, O despisers of the body. You are not bridges to the Übermensch. Unquote. That's from Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Thus far, we've done quite a bit of work analysing human desire, and if you credit Nietzsche's psychology, we've established that desire is inescapable, and that all desires, not just in humans but in all living things, reduce down, in the end, to will to power. Now, turning our attention to something more tangible, consider what is the first, most important and most incontrovertible fact of your existence. Is it your mind, your personality, your soul? For Nietzsche, it's your body. The centrality of the body, both to your sense of your own identity and to your self-esteem, is downplayed by society. It tends to honour the mind as the essential self. It says that personality is more important than appearance, that it's what is inside that counts, and that one cannot judge a book by its cover. In particular, the body as aesthetic object is de-emphasised, at least in our public ethical discourse. Beauty is only skin deep, we say, and so happy acceptance of our own physical flaws and shortcomings is encouraged, as if that were a simple matter. But an undeniable tension exists. Even as we dutifully repeat these mantras of self-acceptance just the way we are, legions of us spend money on fad diets, personal trainers, steroids, skin treatments, slimming pills, dental braces, spray tans, hair transplants, tit jobs, face peels, mole removal and Botox. We want to be beautiful, and not just on the inside. Our insatiable fascination with the beauty of others also throws doubt on any protestations of bodily indifference. If its media is a reflection of a society's tastes and values, the preponderance of attractive celebrities in our media, in all media, shows that people are very far from indifferent about beauty. Beautiful people captivate us. That is their power, and recognising this, we yearn for that kind of power ourselves. Meanwhile, the industry that materialises to capitalise on our desire for beauty is railed against for setting up unattainable ideals. The beauty industry parades a panoply of perfect models, personifications of a lifestyle we are told we can secure for ourselves if we have the financial means. Impossibly slender doe-eyed girls and smooth, muscle-bound boys stare insouciantly at us from billboards and magazine covers. It is the beauty industry, we complain, that has made us feel bad about ourselves, made us feel fat, made us feel ugly, made us feel old. But the beauty industry is not the root cause of this anxiety. This is to mistake the symptom for the disease. Even without exposure to its idealizations, most people are dissatisfied with their bodies and long to be more physically perfect. The industry merely offers its products and services as a purported means of approaching that perfection. It seeks to meet a pre-existing need, though it does unquestionably inflame that need. We are beguiled by its fake, photo-manipulated exemplars, even as they compound our own inadequacy. The beauty industry may set an impossible benchmark against which we measure ourselves only to find ourselves wanting, but it is also a mirror. In its reflection, we see our insecurities about our own physical attractiveness, our own worth. In the beauty industry's promised land, every tooth is straightened, every unsightly blemish is effaced, and every limb is sculpted and firmed. It tries to sell us what it thinks we want, what it knows we want. Almost invariably, when we buy into the fantasy, the products and services fail to deliver the magical transformations we were hoping for. Never fear, we are told. There are yet more products and services that can definitely help. As the brimming coffers of the beauty industry attest, physical appearance is vitally important to humans. Even when we actively reject the impossible standards of the industry's ideals, we still want to be, or at least look, fit, strong, healthy, symmetrical. We want to be able to feel pride in our nakedness, especially so when in a state of undress in the presence of another person. To be appreciated aesthetically, to be yearned for, adored, to spark infatuations in others, this is the height of intoxication. We have all experienced its power, if only as the fawning admirer rather than the exalted admired. In fact, the sight of the beautiful naked human body is so arresting, so provocative, that it's controlled and legislated. It's treated as if it were a public danger. Now, you might point out that it's not just the sight of attractive naked bodies that is proscribed by society, but the sight of naked bodies generally. So perhaps it's the nudity that's the problem, rather than the attractiveness. This is valid to an extent, but consider that relatively few people are interested in seeing unattractive naked bodies, and even fewer in broadcasting images of them. This speaks volumes about the character of the nudity that society feels it must insulate its members from. Beauty is power. It communicates an unmistakable message in a language that is pre-conscious. How much more so when its beauty laid absolutely bare in all its animal magnificence. Today, one does not have to look far to find evidence that physical appearance is amongst the most pressing personal concerns that people have. In particular, body weight and body shape are abiding obsessions, and with obesity at epidemic proportions in the most affluent countries, we can assume that the majority of adults are unhappy with their bodies. Society's most ardent advocates of physical self-acceptance, who claim that to be beautiful on the inside is enough, are extremely vocal in their resistance to tackling this obesity problem. Not without some grounds, they argue that unattainable ideals for our bodies only serve to make us feel miserable about ourselves, and that the pressure to obtain such perfection is actually unhealthy, both emotionally and psychologically. Social organisations have been formed to campaign against ideals of bodily perfection and promote greater acceptance of our physical imperfections, with a particular emphasis on excess weight. This is the so-called body positive movement. This tenacious compulsion to reassure everybody that they can be and should be content with their bodies as they are seems to be well meant, but it's misguided at best and plain damaging at worst. From one obvious standpoint, it is itself the precise opposite of healthy. This is because being out of shape makes you way more susceptible to diabetes, cardiovascular problems, cancers, and many other preventable diseases. Clearly, it's also unhealthy from the perspective of psychological well-being, little more than an incitement to self-deception. And this is because whether we like it or not, the notion that what you look like is not important to your happiness is a disingenuous platitude, if not an outright lie. Accepting that most people do actually care what they look like, and if the statistics are to be believed, tend to be out of shape to one degree or another, all that the advocates of self-acceptance achieve is a muddying of the waters. They weaken the commitment of those who are discontented with their physical state and are contemplating taking action, and they encourage and validate the inaction of the weak, the lazy, and the complacent. Those who are unhappy with their bodies are led to believe that their bad feelings are not manifestations of struggling pride and healthy self-care, but the consequences of social injustice. It's not your dangerously inflated body mass index that's the problem, the advocates of self-acceptance declare. It's everyone else making you feel bad about yourself. You're just fine as you are. Don't you know that everyone is beautiful, and that means you are beautiful too? Beautiful on the inside is the unwelcome proviso that goes unspoken. One wonders to what extent anyone really believes these platitudes, though their seductive allure is obvious enough. You are told it's not your fault, that you are the victim here, and that you shouldn't bother to exert yourself over this matter. There's something a little insidious, I shall go on to suggest, about this culture of undermining attempts at healthy self-transformation. Now, it may be that you feel a little perturbed with this talk of body weight. Doesn't it seem grossly superficial? Where is Nietzsche in this? He was a philosopher, not a dietitian or a personal trainer. Surely there are less trivial issues to be tackled. Aren't intelligent people above such vain concerns anyway, at least for the most part? In answer, I grant that this is true. Nietzsche did not tend to concern himself too much with cosmetic matters. My focus on this issue reflects our contemporary obsession rather than Nietzsche's. However, as you will soon discover, Nietzsche is the philosopher of the body, and for him, the strong, healthy, and beautiful body is an unalloyed good, is even the fundamental good. The state of your body is not something towards which you should be indifferent. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he writes that, quote, "The awakened and knowing say, body am I entirely, and nothing else." Unquote. For Nietzsche, the body is a great wisdom, a great intelligence, and it speaks of the meaning of the earth. What can these cryptic and grandiose claims mean? Fear not, all should become as clear as the resounding peal of a temple bell at dawn. If you sit quietly, perhaps you can already hear it in the distance.
The Becoming Übermensch project is a new and tender green shoot striving towards the light. If it's going to thrive, it needs the sunshine and gentle rain of your support. If you find this material of value, help us to help you by doing a few simple things. Hit follow so you don't miss the next episode. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook and X. Search Becoming Übermensch, all one word. Drop us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. And if you know people who'd get something from this podcast, please do share it with them. Your support makes all the difference and can help this project survive and flourish.
Meanwhile, for people in the developed world, the most common barrier to a stronger, healthier, more beautiful body is, you will concede, excess weight. It's also the thing most amenable to being perceptibly changed. Therefore, we confront this elephant in the room frankly and fearlessly. Furthermore, I'll be arguing that this urge to brush aside concerns for the appearance of the physical body, labelling them vain, trivial, and superficial is, in fact, a sign and a symptom of a poisonous culture of bodily denigration that is deeply embedded within the values that constitute our moral inheritance. So when it comes to bodily appearance, we're confused by society's mixed messages and our own individual ambivalence. There is dissonance for sure. But let us be honest with ourselves. We feel that appearance is important, even though we say that it's not important, or more accurately, that it should not be important. But where does this should come from? The idea that it should be only what is inside that counts, that the body should be secondary to the personality, and that concerns for the appearance of the body are signs of vanity, triviality, and superficiality. You experience yourself as two very distinct things. You have your body on the one hand and your mind on the other. Unlike your body, which is out there in the world, visible and tangible, a big lump of stuff, your mind is incorporeal. It cannot be seen or touched. The mind is your ego, your sense of I. Ego is literally the Latin word for I. Your mind is your personality, your character, your memories, your knowledge, your reasoning faculties, your hopes and fears, your desires and your fantasies. Your mind is secret and private. Only you are privy to its activity. Usually you alone really know what you are thinking or feeling, unless and until you choose to share. And you can actively hide your true thoughts and feelings, for example by smiling and being friendly towards someone you can't abide. Certainly the body can betray you, a little perspiration on the brow perhaps, an inability to maintain eye contact, some closed or furtive body language. But in principle, we can all paste on a poker face with some degree of success. For Nietzsche, this talent for concealing the activity of our minds has a long and very dark history. But let's not digress, not yet. We are each of us, apparently, one thing that comes in two entirely dissimilar parts, and so our everyday experience reinforces a dualism. Body on the one hand, mind on the other. The body is a brute physical fact. You can look at it, you can slap it, you can pinch it, you can even smell it. The conscious mind, on the other hand, is like a ghost or a piece of music. You experience it. You know that it's there, but you will never be able to catch it by the tail. It is qualitatively different both to the body and to all the objects in the material world. Unlike the body, it has no physical attributes, no mass, no weight, no shape, no texture, no temperature, and no colour. It is entirely silent too, because it is, of course, the body that broadcasts the word sounds that the mind generates, via the tongue, the lips, the lungs, etc. The mind is ever present to you. It is always on, even when asleep and dreaming. Its constant presence at all times suggests that, despite its elusive immaterial character, it is perhaps the most real thing of all. This was the observation that underpinned René Descartes' sceptical inquiry that resulted in his famous dictum cogito ergo sum, which translates as I think, therefore I am. Widely considered to be the father of modern Western philosophy, Descartes was a French thinker who lived from 1596 to 1650. The cogito appeared in his book Meditations on First Philosophy in 1641, and it serves as a foundation for his philosophical views. Descartes wanted to definitively establish what, if anything, we could know with absolute certainty, and so he contrived a thought experiment, the premise of which was that everything should be doubted. By this means, he arrived at the conclusion that the act of thinking is the one thing that cannot be doubted, because one needs to be able to think in order to be able to doubt at all. Therefore, thinking is beyond doubt, and so it's a reliable indicator of one's own existence as a mind. This we can know for certain, or so he claimed. For Descartes, the body was less certain than this doubting but undoubtable mind because, in theory, the evidence of our senses, which discloses the body to us, could be bogus. Is the world real, or is it a dream? How could we tell the difference? What about if some evil demon fabricated sensory evidence of an external world, including our own bodies, just to trick us? How would we know if this was actually the case or not? This disconcerting idea was given a vivid interpretation in the 1999 movie The Matrix, in which an enslaved humanity lives in a simulated reality created by sophisticated sentient machines who are using their bodies as sort of meat batteries. With his conclusion that the mind is absolutely certain and absolutely real, but the body, not so much, Descartes effectively secularized the body-soul dualism that was already unquestioningly accepted throughout Christendom. Descartes concluded that his preeminent mind was identical with that which the religionists called the soul. He even granted that, though the body may be mortal, subject to decay and passing away like all physical things, the mind or soul was immortal and could not be destroyed. Incidentally, speaking of religion, despite Descartes committing himself to doubting everything, the one thing that he apparently didn't trouble himself to doubt, or at least dare not confess to doubting, was the existence of God, which in Catholic France in the 1600s is probably fair enough. But if this was merely a forgivable concession to self-preservation, it didn't stop him going on to proclaim God as the guarantor of the world's real existence. His decidedly religious conclusion was that a benign deity would not fool people into believing there was an external world if there wasn't, and as God's existence was unquestioned or unquestionable, and God was very benign indeed, Descartes was prepared to surmise the world was real and not an illusion. That meant that bodies were real too, even if they were not absolutely undoubtable in the way that the mind was. In Descartes' dualism, mind and body are two distinct substances with different properties. The mind is the soul, an immaterial and imperishable substance that is responsible for thought, reason, and consciousness. And the body is an impermanent material substance operating in the physical world and subject to its physical laws. He hypothesized that the mind and body interact with each other through the pineal gland in the brain, or some nonsense or other. A stab in the dark which only serves to illustrate that Descartes raised more questions than he answered with his notion of the seemingly incompatible mind and body, and his lack of a clear explanation as to how the two could work together. It's easy for us to presume, as Descartes himself did, that the conscious mind's immanence to us as individuals is proof that it's a real entity in its own right, is even the most fundamental entity, is even perhaps the mythical soul. Can you doubt your mind without using your mind? The idea is absurd. Consequently, your mind is central to your sense of self, right? And even though Descartes couldn't explain how the mind and the body work in concert, your lived experience is that they do. Your mind doesn't just think about things passively, stroking its metaphorical chin. It seems to make decisions that determine your body's actions in the physical world. And so to Nietzsche. Descartes may have run aground on an irresolvable conundrum with his lack of an explanation for this mind-body interaction, but Nietzsche brooked no such difficulties. He completely rejects this mysterious Cartesian duality of mind and body, giving short shrift to the idea of a supernatural, immaterial entity at the core of every human being, and he even dismisses the idea that the mind is the essential self. For him, this notion of a conscious mind piloting itself through the world in its body, like an astronaut in a spacesuit or a genie in a bottle, is an illusion. Instead, he maintained that the mind is not something distinct from the body. Contrary to Descartes, it is not even a thing, still less the most real thing. He writes, quote, "Something is thought, therefore there is something that thinks. This is what Descartes' argument amounts to," unquote. And that's from Will to Power 484. Nietzsche's alternative view is that the mind must be understood as a function of the body, not as a separate commanding component of the self. Think of mind then as an activity, a verb like swimming or writing, rather than as a noun like swimmer or writer. The mind is thinking, not a thinker. These verbs, swimming, writing, thinking, they designate processes, events, stuff happening. The nouns, swimmer, writer, thinker, designate instead discrete independent entities. To use a noun, mind, for the activity of thinking, a verb, is to sneak in an entity where there is only a process, an event, some stuff happening. There is no mind in itself. It is not some kind of object. There are only mental activities, thinking, feeling, perceiving, and so on. So what is it that does the thinking, the feeling, and the perceiving? Of course, it is not the mind, but the body that thinks, and we call its unceasing flow of mental and emotional activity mind, or consciousness, or ego, or soul. Nietzsche writes that, quote, soul is only a word for something in the body, unquote, and that's from Thus Spoke Zarathustra. In other words, what we call mind is merely the body expressing a function. Consequently, there is no substantial separation of mind and body, even though it feels like there is. There is no real duality here. When we say a swimmer is swimming, there is just one thing, not two. It's the same with your body doing its thinking. In the same way that we cannot substantially separate the swimming from the swimmer, because we can only have swimming if there is a swimmer, we cannot separate the thinking from the body. By erroneously doing so, we create this superfluous spectral entity, the mind. But there is no ghost in the machine. What we call mind is an emergent property, an epiphenomenon. To be more precise, it is thinking that creates the idea of the mind itself. This is something we'll drill into deeply over time, and properly grasped, it will completely overturn your understanding of who you are. For Nietzsche, you are your body. It is a doer, doing. Your body is the doer, and your mind is just a word for one of its doings. If this is confusing, consider that Nietzsche identifies grammar itself as a cause of error when talking of the mind. Quote, that there must be something that thinks when we think is merely a formulation of a grammatical custom which sets an agent to every action. Unquote. And again, that's from Will to Power 484. So that's to say, the subject and predicate construction of language creates false divisions. Nietzsche uses the example of people saying that the lightning flashes. In this case, lightning is the agent, the subject, and flashes is its action, its predicate, two things. But the flash is not something the lightning does. The lightning just is the flash. He writes, quote, there is no being behind the doing, affecting, becoming. The doer is simply fabricated into the doing. The doing is everything. Common people basically double the doing when they have the lightning flash. This is a doing. The same happening is posited first as cause and then once again as its effect. Unquote. And that's from Genealogy of Morals 1:13. Similarly, the mind is fabricated into the thinking, but the mind does not do the thinking, it just is the thinking. Nietzsche suggests that the grammatical construction of language generates bogus metaphysical assumptions. In other words, we presume that reality conforms to the structure of language. But humans created language as a means of representing reality. So to then have the temerity to think that reality should conform itself to these representations is to get things completely the wrong way round. Before we proceed, a brief note on this word metaphysics. If physics is the science of understanding the physical world of matter and energy through observation, experimentation, and mathematical modelling, metaphysics is a branch of philosophy that is concerned with exploring the nature of reality beyond the physical world. It concerns itself with the abstract and unobservable aspects of existence, and it has been an abiding obsession for philosophers since ancient times. The great Aristotle himself coined the term in the 4th century BC. The problem with metaphysical theories is that they generally tend to be unprovable in practical terms, and so metaphysical disputes tend to be irresolvable. Metaphysics encompasses explicitly religious questions such as the existence of God or gods, sin, karma, life after death, spirits and the soul. Ideas that might be also described as supernatural in that they are based in some kind of reality beyond the natural one of our everyday experience. Nietzsche dismisses metaphysical supernaturalism as fantastic speculation and wishful thinking. He sees his task as deflating such theories by finding naturalistic explanations for the question it concerns itself with. His stated task is to, quote, translate man back into nature, unquote. And that's from Beyond Good and Evil, 230. To return to our examination of the metaphysics of grammar, take another example of the grammar trap. You say, my body, and thereby you postulate two entities, my, the one who possesses the body, and body, the body itself. But who is this one who says, my? Who is it that possesses the body? Probably you usually feel your mind is the one saying, my, because, for one thing, that's the part of you that uses language. But if you accept for a moment that mind is not a separate entity from your body, not the real you, that you just are your body, then in this claim it just is your body itself that possesses your body. Considered in these terms, the claim my body doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like saying body's body. The grammatical structure of the claim postulates two things, you and your body. But there is only one thing, your body. The same could be said of pronouns like myself. It's equivalent to saying self's self. But we don't possess our bodies, we just are our bodies. And we don't possess ourselves, we just are ourselves. You can see that dualism and the separation of mind and body are built right into our language, as indeed is the elevated status of the mind over the body. When you, viewed as a conscious language-using mind, say, my body, the statement suggests that the body is subordinate to and a possession of your mind, when in fact, for Nietzsche, the opposite is the more appropriate expression of the relationship. He writes that the conscious mind's relationship to the body is one of merely being a, quote, small accessory, unquote, and, quote, a little instrument and plaything, unquote. And that's from the Joyous Science 3.3 and Thus Spoke Zarathustra 1.4 respectively. In Nietzsche's view, the conscious mind is a mere tool in service of the body, and this is quite a jarring reversal of our commonly accepted intuitions. What about the expression, my mind? Again, there's two things here, the mind and the one who possesses the mind. And who is this mysterious one who says my, the one to whom the mind belongs? If your mind is the real you, who is speaking when you say, my mind? Perhaps in this example, we catch a glimpse of a yet more subtle instantiation of the soul, something even more rarefied and essential than the mind is being called forth into existence purely by grammar. In such cases, language seems to imply the presence of an enigmatic other, an essential self, standing behind and beyond such claims. Can you see how language, the very architecture of thought itself, can have significant metaphysical implications, suggesting, in this case, a separation of you from your body, from yourself, and even from your mind? Little wonder then that we are so susceptible to the illusion of the soul. I hope you are starting to see some of the deficiencies in this commonly held faith in mind-body dualism. However, if we are to communicate clearly, we will need to continue to work with the apparent facts of our everyday lived experience and talk about it using the existing conventions of language. It can be difficult at this stage to think about yourself non-dualistically. That is, with your mind and body as a single, unified entity. And it's almost impossible to talk clearly about yourself non-dualistically due to the subject and predicate structure of language. Therefore, to keep things easy, I will speak of your mind, your body, and yourself, even though this tends to reinforce mind-body dualism, implying that mind and body are discrete things, separable from each other in some way. The important thing is that you understand that, for Nietzsche, there is something fundamentally artificial in this dualism we attribute to ourselves. Understanding this will help you overcome some very common and very negative prejudices about the body, and it will also ultimately help you to gain more effective command over yourself. I will leave you with the first in a series of exercises that will help you return to the body, understand yourself with greater insight, and ultimately help you master yourself. But first, music. This week I am recommending the track Singularity by John Hopkins, and I'm going to say no more on the subject. Links in the show description as usual. It's time to have some illuminating fun experimenting with the way that language affects your sense of self. This exercise is called Dog Mind, and this is part 1. Take a day for this exercise and try to confine your language use and your thinking about yourself in the following ways. Refer to yourself only in the third person, avoiding all first-person pronouns, I, me, my, and mine. This is an effort at a concerted disassociation from yourself. And you might ask, why bother with this when disassociation from the body seems to be part of the problem that results from mind-body dualism? Firstly, you'll learn something about yourself from this exercise in contrived detachment, which is going to be helpful as you proceed. Secondly, it will provide an interesting contrast to other variations of this practice that will follow in future shows. Whilst conducting the experiment, refer to yourself only in the third person by name. This will get quite embarrassing, as you will appear insufferably pretentious to other people. Explaining yourself each time would be tiresome, though interesting, so an alternative option, instead of doing it for real, would be to keep a journal and just record your thoughts, feelings and activities in it in the third person. See how it feels. Write about how it feels. Of course, if you want to live a little more dangerously, which I encourage, just do it for real in everyday life and offer no explanations to anyone. Write about the hilarious reactions you get. What fun! Okay, before we wrap up, if you value Becoming Übermensch and you want more, please ensure its continued existence by supporting the show. Details are in the show notes. If you're ready to stare into the abyss and let the abyss stare into you, by delving deeper into this work, much deeper, I have a Patreon. Become a De Profundis member and access exclusive deep dive content, plus chances to ask your own questions and vote on future topics for the show. Details are also in the show notes. If you can't afford to contribute, that's fine of course, but please like, share and review. That makes a big difference too. Thank you so much for supporting this project. To conclude, our public discourse encourages the belief that the body is secondary to the mind, that personality and inner virtues alone constitute true worth. Yet our relentless preoccupation with physical beauty, both in ourselves and in others, exposes this as a hollow ideal. While the beauty industry intensifies our dissatisfaction, it is not the origin of our anxieties. It simply exploits a far deeper, pre-existing yearning for aesthetic excellence. Nietzsche helps us to understand why, at a fundamental level, we are not beings of spirit trapped in bodies, but bodies through and through. He dismantles the Cartesian dualism that still infects our thinking, showing that the mind is not a separate essential entity, but a function and expression of the living body itself. Through a careful critique of language, Nietzsche reveals how grammar tricks us into positing a false split between doer and deed, between body and mind, creating the illusion of a soul lurking behind our actions. The mind is simply a process of the body. It does not stand apart from it. Accepting this truth demands a profound reorientation of how we understand ourselves, not as ethereal minds burdened by physicality, but as organisms whose physical vitality, health, strength and beauty are integral to our being. To proceed, we must be prepared to question not only the superficial devaluations of the body, but the deep metaphysical assumptions embedded in our thinking and language. In doing so, we lay the groundwork for a more honest, more empowering philosophy of selfhood, one that does not deny the body, but exalts it as the true source of our power, creativity, and becoming. In the next show, we will further delve into the mind-body confusion, and I will share with you an exercise, indeed a guided meditation, that I'm convinced will prove to you that the notion that you possess a soul is not just fanciful, but in actual fact is completely and utterly absurd. Until next time, like the man said, live dangerously.